Good morning. Good morning. We discussed with the French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius Friday in Vienna if there was the need to change the agenda of our meeting today. We actually realized that the agenda was already very much centered on the issues that we need to tackle to respond to the attacks in Paris, also to the attacks that took place the day before in Beirut, the attacks on Russian civilians on the plane, in Egypt, in Turkey, in Iraq, in Syria every day. Our whole agenda, our whole work, daily work of all the ministers, of all the European institutions is already centered on fighting Daesh with all the possible means and its ramifications. Not only in Syria, not only in Iraq, but everywhere it is spreading, and also forms of terrorism in other parts of the world, like Africa. And this is also something we discussed in Malta at the summit last week with the African leaders. It's not only migration we have on the agenda with our partners in the Arab world, in Africa, but it's also security, counterterrorism, and our values, our common values that are European ones, but also are universal ones. The one of democracy, of freedom, of the right to live life in peace and respect. And we will work today, first of all, on Syria. I will report to the ministers the work we have undertaken in these weeks. Last Friday in Vienna, with the establishment of a contact group led by the United Nations Special Envoy. Staffan de Mistura will be with us today to work together on the follow-up of the decisions taken on Friday in Vienna. As you know, the European Union has worked over these months since the summer to establish this contact group, insisting very much that all the relevant actors, regional and international actors, join together their forces to guarantee the fight against Daesh and the defeat of Daesh in Syria, and at the same time ceasefire and a transition, a political transition for the country. Obviously, ceasefire doesn't involve the fight against Daesh and terrorist groups there. We will so exchange views with Staffan de Mistura on the way ahead. The European Union is ready to support and to do its part on all the relevant points that were agreed in Vienna, in particular the work we can do with the opposition groups to bring them at the table, and also to start the political transition in Syria. But this is something we'll discuss with the minister and we'll come back to you in the afternoon. We also have other 3 points on the agenda. One is obviously the migration one. We'll come back again to the follow-up of the Malta summit with the African partners. There are specific things that we are now called to do, not only money-wise, but also in terms of cooperation with our partners, and also on the eastern route of migration. There is an important work we're doing with Turkey in particular, but also with the Balkan countries and the countries of the Middle East, in particular Jordan and Lebanon, to support them not only, again, on the migration side, but also on security and counterterrorism, and we'll discuss that. And we have also discussion on the Middle East peace process. I will update the ministers on my latest talks with President Abbas and Prime Minister Netanyahu. And finally, short point but consistent relevance on our eastern partners. I just came back last week from Georgia and Ukraine, so we'll have an update on that.
High Representative, since you did mention the Russian flight had been collapsing in Egypt, does it mean that you are going to give the same support to the Egyptian authority as much as the French, since you put both of them are threatened attack from Daesh?
Daesh is a threat to all of us, and let me say that coming together today, as we were coming together on Friday, joining forces and acknowledging that this is not an attack on one single country. It's not only an attack on Europe, it's an attack on civilization, I would say. Requires us to unite forces, share information, share a political agenda, put together all our diplomatic, economic, sometimes also military efforts to face this threat. There is a security component to this. There is mainly a diplomatic and a political component of the work we are doing, and I believe this is going to be the field where we're going to defeat Daesh for real. Managing, for instance, to start a political transition in Syria, different kind of governance able to unite the country, would provide the best possible platform to defeat Daesh, not only to fight it, but we are not there yet. But we started the process, and this is the key. So the important thing, the important message that comes, I think, in these days from Europe for sure, but also from the rest of our partners in the region, especially around the Mediterranean, is we come together. They want to divide us, we are even more united.
What do you say to people that the military action is more needed?
And the Netherlands said the same also. And you said France said that we are in Act 4, and Netherlands said what does it mean for the European policy? Does it change anything? Especially when you said that in Vienna we need to come together concerning Syria. Paris, does it give a momentum? What happened to Paris to your diplomatic efforts? In which way?
It's since months that we have tried to give a push to a new diplomatic effort on Syria. Since the summer, not by chance, because in July we signed a very important agreement with Iran that we believe opened the way for a possibility of a different regional engagement. So immediately after that, we insisted with our partners, with the UN, to restart with a different push a diplomatic process to solve the crisis in Syria. After 4 years and a half, I think it's high time. And I am sad to say we were right, because the only way in which we can really guarantee the security of our citizens, obviously there is the immediate tasks. These are more for interior ministers, intelligence sharing, security, internal borders, external borders. These are all fields that need immediate responses, and Europeans are coming together also on that side. You know that there is going to be an interior ministers meeting, an extraordinary one on Friday. This is the immediate, and this is for the interior work we have to do. But the real guarantee of our security is prevention and defeat of terrorist groups everywhere in the region. Again, I mentioned the Middle East, I mentioned Sub-Saharan Africa. I will go to Chad on Friday, as the ministers will be meeting here, the interior ministers will be meeting here. I will be meeting with the G5 Sahel to discuss with them the risks of Boko Haram and other terrorist groups that are affecting the security there. But again, we live in a world where security there also means security here, and vice versa. So our job as foreign ministers, my job as High Representative, is to work with our partners around the world to make sure that the conditions for security of our citizens and other citizens are built. It's not something that one builds in one moment, but for sure what happened in Paris, and again, what happened also in the other countries of the region, gives us a sense, I think, gives all the international community a new sense of urgency. We need to find a way of effectively put an end to the war in Syria and not only fight, but also defeat Daesh once for all. Thank you. Bye.